There's a good chance the GPU you're planning to buy, or already bought, is from a brand you should have never trusted in the first place, because hidden behind those clean boxes and big spec numbers are GPU brands that cut corners, dodge responsibility, and hope you never need support. Today, we're exposing 8 GPU brands that consistently cause problems for buyers, even though they're sold at trusted stores like Micro Center or Best Buy. These aren't one-off horror stories. They're repeat patterns that show up after the return window closes. Along the way, I'll also point out 2 GPU brands that are generally safer bets, so you know where to put your money instead. And at the end, I'll show you how to spot a bad GPU brand on your own before you ever swipe your card again. Let's get started. 8. Gigabyte Gaming, a Eagle, the safe choice that shows problems later. If you've been around PC hardware long enough, this one might sting a little. Because Gigabyte is a name a lot of people trust. It sounds established, it sounds safe, it sounds like one of those brands you don't even question when you see it sitting behind the glass at Micro Center. And that's exactly why the complaints hit harder. Here's what keeps coming up over and over again. Structural and quality control issues that buyers say appear months after purchase, not days, not during the return window, after. People install the card once, never touch it again, and then discover cracks near the PCIe area, sag-related damage, or unexplained failures that weren't caused by abuse or overclocking. And when they reach out for support, that's where frustration explodes, because many users report being told the damage is physical, even when the card was mounted normally, supported, and never moved. Once it's labeled physical damage, the conversation often ends. Here's the part that really gets people angry. Gigabyte knows sag is a thing. They even include support brackets with some models. But if the card still fails, suddenly the responsibility is yours. So what you're left with is a brand that can look like a solid deal up front, but carries a risk that only shows itself when you're already committed. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see how the next brand handles support, when nothing is visibly wrong at all. 7. Asus TUF Gaming, the built tough card with a support problem. Asus TUF Gaming GPUs are marketed as durable, reliable, and built to last, which makes them a very common choice for buyers who want something safe without paying ROG Strix prices. On paper, they look like the sensible middle ground. Where complaints start to surface isn't raw performance, it's what happens when something goes wrong. Buyers regularly describe support experiences involving long response times, strict damage assessments, and warranty conversations that feel more like an interrogation than assistance. What frustrates people most is the contrast. The TUF branding is all about toughness and reliability, yet when issues appear, many users report feeling like they have to prove they didn't do anything wrong just to get basic support. Not every Asus TUF Gaming GPU is a problem, and plenty work perfectly fine. But when you choose a card specifically because it promises peace of mind, even a small risk of a difficult warranty process becomes a big deal. And if you think strict support policies are frustrating here, the next brand takes that rigidity even further. 6. Zotac Twin Edge AMP, the strict policy brand. Zotac's Twin Edge and AMP GPUs are everywhere because they usually come in a little cheaper than competing cards with the same chipset. For a lot of buyers, that price difference feels like an easy win, especially when the specs look identical on the shelf. The issues people run into don't usually start on day one. They start when something minor goes wrong and turns into a support situation. Zotac has built a reputation for very strict warranty interpretation, and that's where frustration shows up again and again in user reports. Buyers often describe RMAs that hinge on tiny details, a mark, a fan issue, a cosmetic concern, that suddenly become reasons to deny or complicate a claim. Even when the card hasn't been abused, the process can feel rigid and unforgiving, with little flexibility once support decides something counts as physical damage. That rigidity matters because GPUs don't fail in dramatic ways most of the time. They fail quietly. A fan degrades, a card starts crashing under load, performance becomes inconsistent. And when the support process is this strict, a small problem can quickly turn into a dead end. Zotac Twin Edge and AMP cards can work perfectly fine, but the risk isn't the silicon. It's what happens when you need help and realize how narrow the support lane actually is. And if you think strict policies are frustrating, the next brand shows what happens when support itself feels hard to reach. recommended. Brand 2, Sapphire Nitro Plus Pulse. Sapphire Nitro Plus and Pulse GPUs don't usually dominate headlines, and that's actually the point. Among AMD buyers, Sapphire has built a reputation for doing the unsexy things well. Solid cooling designs, conservative power delivery, and fewer surprises after long-term use. What comes up repeatedly in user discussions isn't hype, it's consistency. People talk about stable thermals, predictable behavior under load, and support experiences that don't feel like a fight. When something does go wrong, the process tends to be clearer and less adversarial than with many competitors. Another reason Sapphire shows up as a safer recommendation is focus. Unlike brands that stretch across dozens of unrelated product categories, Sapphire is heavily concentrated on graphics cards. That specialization shows up in board design choices and fewer "why did they do this?" moments. That doesn't mean every Sapphire card is perfect, or that prices are always the lowest. But if you're the kind of buyer who values reliability over flash, and wants a card that quietly does its job for years, this is one of the brands people trust for a reason. Now that you've seen a lower risk option, let's get back to the countdown. 5. PowerColor Red Devil Fighter, the warranty confusion brand. PowerColor's Red Devil and Fighter GPUs show up often in AMD builds because they're aggressively priced and marketed as enthusiast-friendly options. On the surface, they look like smart buys, solid specs, bold branding, and performance that seems competitive with more mainstream names. Where the complaints start to cluster is around warranty handling and support clarity. Many buyers only realize this after the return window closes, when a problem turns into a support ticket. The process can feel unclear, with users reporting inconsistent communication and uncertainty over how RMAs are handled depending on region or situation. That lack of transparency is what frustrates people most. When you're spending hundreds of dollars on a GPU, you want to know exactly what happens if it fails, not navigate vague policies while your system is down. PowerColor Red Devil and Fighter cards can perform well, but the recurring feedback shows that support consistency is the risk most buyers don't factor in at checkout. And if confusing warranty experiences worry you, the next brand shows how inconsistency can show up even earlier in the ownership experience. 4. PNY XLR8, the inconsistent experience brand. PNY XLR8 GPUs are often picked because they feel safe and understated. The branding is clean, the pricing is usually competitive, and the company name has been around long enough that most buyers don't think twice about it. At a glance, it looks like a straightforward, no-risk choice. The issue people keep running into isn't one dramatic failure, it's inconsistency. Some PNY XLR8 cards run perfectly fine for years, while others develop problems early, ranging from instability under load to cooling behavior that doesn't match expectations. Two buyers can purchase the same model and walk away with completely different experiences. When problems do show up, support is where frustration starts to build. Many users describe customer service as hit or miss. Some get quick responses and smooth resolutions. Others report slow communication, vague instructions, or long stretches of waiting with no clear updates. That unpredictability is the real red flag, because you don't know which version of the experience you're getting until you're already stuck in it. And quick pause here. If this video has already saved you from even considering one bad GPU purchase, hit the like button so more builders see this before they spend their money. And if you want more no BS PC buying guides like this, subscribing makes sure you don't miss the next one. That uncertainty is why PNY XLR8 lands here. A GPU is the most expensive and most critical part of a gaming PC, and inconsistency in quality or support turns it into a gamble. For buyers who value predictability and peace of mind, that risk alone is enough to look elsewhere. And if you think inconsistency is frustrating, the next brand shows what happens when the support structure itself becomes part of the problem. 3. ASRock Challenger, Chaos Phantom Gaming, the Pass the Blame brand. ASRock Challenger and Phantom Gaming GPUs often attract buyers who want solid specs without paying a premium, especially in AMD builds. On paper, they look straightforward and practical, which is exactly why people are surprised when issues show up later. The most common frustration doesn't start with performance. It starts with who is actually responsible when something goes wrong. Many buyers report being redirected between retailer policies, distributor rules, and manufacturer support, creating a loop where no one clearly owns the problem. This structure matters because GPU failures are rarely dramatic. They're subtle, random crashes, instability under load, or fans that slowly degrade. And when support is structured in a way that pushes responsibility elsewhere, those small issues become exhausting to resolve. What makes this especially frustrating is that buyers often feel they did everything right. No overclocking, no physical damage, just normal use, followed by a support process that feels fragmented and slow. ASRock Challenger and Phantom gaming cards can perform just fine, but the recurring complaint pattern shows that support structure and accountability are where confidence breaks down. And now that we've hit the third brand in this section, it's time to pause, because not every option in this price range carries the same risk. Recommended brand. 1. EVGA. EVGA is no longer making new GPUs, but it still gets mentioned constantly for one simple reason. It set the standard for how GPU companies should treat customers. And once you understand why, it completely reframes how you judge every other brand on this list. For years, EVGA built a reputation not just on performance, but on what happened after the sale. When a card failed, buyers weren't met with suspicion or silence. RMAs were clear. Communication was fast. And the default assumption wasn't, prove you didn't mess up, but let's fix this. That difference matters more than most people realize, because GPUs don't usually die in obvious dramatic ways. They develop issues slowly, random crashes, fans that degrade, instability that only shows up under load. EVGA's support model acknowledged that reality instead of fighting it, and that's why so many longtime builders still reference them as the gold standard. This is also why EVGA cards remain attractive on the used and open box market, especially at Micro Center. When you combine EVGA's historically strong support culture with Micro Center's return policies, you get a level of buyer protection that's increasingly rare in modern GPU shopping. It's important to be clear here, this isn't blind nostalgia. EVGA isn't perfect, and used hardware always carries risk. But when thousands of experienced builders independently say, this is how it should be done, that tells you something about what the rest of the industry is missing. EVGA serves as a benchmark, a reminder that GPU support doesn't have to be hostile, confusing, or exhausting. And once you know that level of service is possible, it becomes much harder to accept brands that treat warranty claims like a battle to be won. With that perspective in mind, let's finish the countdown, because the final two brands show exactly how far most companies have drifted from that standard. 2. XFX Speedster Merc. The warranty gamble. XFX Speedster and Merc GPUs are appealing for one reason: their bold marketing and aggressive pricing. These are the cards you see with eye-catching designs and a promise of high-end performance without the same high-end price tag. On paper, it feels like a win, but when you dig deeper, things start to get a little tricky. The recurring complaint about XFX isn't about performance. It's about the warranty experience. While XFX offers a warranty on paper, buyers often report issues with turnaround time and RMA processing. For some, the card may fail early, and when it does, the process to get a replacement can be a waiting game. For others, the issue isn't getting the card replaced. It's the fact that XFX limits their warranty in ways that feel restrictive. What gets buyers frustrated is the inconsistency. Some users get their RMAs handled quickly and easily, while others experience long delays or feel like they're being passed around between departments with no real resolution. This lack of predictability in warranty claims adds another layer of stress, especially when a card you depend on suddenly stops working and you're stuck in a back and forth with support. XFX Speedster and Merc cards may seem like a bargain at first, but the lack of clarity around warranty handling and support means you're gambling with a major part of your build. It's a risk that might pay off, but for many, it just leads to frustration down the line. And if XFX's support unpredictability isn't enough, the next brand on the list takes inconsistency to a whole new level. 1. MSI Ventus Gaming X. The looks premium fails early. Trap MSI is one of the most trusted names in PC hardware, and that's exactly why this one catches so many people off guard. When you see the MSI logo, your brain fills in the gaps for you. Quality, engineering, reliability. You assume the card will just work, and that assumption is where the problem starts. With MSI GPUs, the complaints don't usually target the brand's flagship models. The issues concentrate heavily around specific lines, especially Ventus, and to a lesser extent, certain gaming X configurations, depending on generation. These are the cards designed to hit a price point, and that's where the shortcuts show up. A recurring theme in user reports is thermal behavior that doesn't match expectations. Cards that technically stay within safe limits, but only by running hotter, louder, or more aggressively than comparable models from other brands. Fans ramp up fast, noise becomes constant, sustained loads lead to throttling that slowly chips away at performance. Then there's build consistency. Buyers describe uneven thermal pad application, cooling solutions that feel underpowered for the GPU they're attached to, and PCBs that flex more than they should. None of these issues scream defective on day one. They creep in. Weeks turn into months. Temps slowly rise. Stability slowly drops. And because the card technically still works, you're often left questioning yourself. Is it your case airflow, your power supply, a driver issue? That's the trap. By the time it becomes obvious, the card itself is the problem. You're often outside the easiest support window, dealing with a warranty process that wasn't designed to acknowledge slow failure scenarios very well. What makes this especially frustrating is that MSI does know how to build excellent GPUs. Their higher-end Gaming X Trio models are proof of that, which means the issue isn't capability, it's tiered compromise. You're paying for a trusted name, but in these lower and mid-tier lines, you're not always getting the durability that name implies, and that's why this brand lands at number 1. Not because every MSI GPU is bad, not because the performance charts are fake, but because the gap between expectation and long-term reality is larger here than most people realize. And once you see that pattern, it completely changes how you shop. How to spot a bad GPU brand before you buy. By now, you've probably noticed something important. None of these bad GPU brands fail in obvious ways on day one. They don't come with warning labels. They don't scream bad decision from the box. Most of them look perfectly fine, until time, heat, or a warranty claim exposes the truth. So the real skill isn't memorizing brand names. It's learning how to spot the red flags yourself before you ever get to the checkout counter. The first red flag is how a brand markets itself versus what it actually delivers. If a GPU line leans heavily on words like military grade, extreme durability, or built tough, but user complaints consistently mention heat, noise, or early failures, that's a disconnect worth paying attention to. Good hardware doesn't need to oversell toughness. It proves it quietly over time. The second red flag is cooling shortcuts. When a GPU uses a thinner heatsink, fewer heat pipes, or a smaller fan setup than competing cards at the same power level, that cost cutting shows up later as higher temperatures, louder fans, and thermal throttling. Specs won't warn you about this, but teardown photos, long-term reviews, and user temperature reports will. Another major warning. Sign is vague or overly strict warranty language. If a brand's warranty page is filled with exclusions, conditional wording, or broad definitions of physical damage, that's not there to protect you. It's there to protect them. The brands that handle support well tend to explain their process clearly and don't rely on ambiguity to deny claims. You also want to look for patterns, not single complaints. Every brand has a few angry customers. That's normal. What matters is when you see the same story repeated across forums, reviews, and comment sections. The same failure point, the same RMA frustration, the same timeline. When different people describe the same experience independently, that's not bad luck. That's a trend. One of the most overlooked factors is how a brand behaves after the return window closes. Many GPUs work perfectly for the first few weeks. Problems often show up months later. That's why brands with slow, rigid, or outsourced support systems feel fine at first and painful later. A good brand doesn't disappear once the retailer stops handling returns. Finally, understand that tier matters more than logos. Most GPU companies sell both excellent and risky products under the same name. A flagship line can be rock solid, while a budget line quietly cuts corners. If a card is dramatically cheaper than its competitors with the same chipset, there's always a reason, and it's rarely free performance. The bottom line is simple. You're not just buying a GPU, you're buying the company behind it, the cooling decisions they made, and the way they'll treat you if something goes wrong. If you learn to spot these signs, you won't need lists like this anymore, because you'll see bad GPU brands coming from a mile away. If there's one thing you should take away from this video, it's this. Buying a GPU isn't just about specs, and it's definitely not just about price. It's about the brand decisions that happen long before that card ever reaches a store shelf. Decisions you usually don't see until something goes wrong. The uncomfortable reality is that many of these GPUs work perfectly fine at first. The problems show up later, after the return window closes, after you've built your system around that card, after you've committed hundreds of dollars and countless hours. That's when brand quality, warranty structure, and support behavior suddenly matter more than clock speeds ever did. And this isn't about fear-mongering or saying every card from these brands is doomed. Plenty of people will never have an issue, but when patterns keep repeating across thousands of buyers, forums, reviews, and RMA stories, ignoring them doesn't make you optimistic, it makes you vulnerable. The goal here isn't to tell you what to buy blindly, it's to help you buy with leverage, to understand why two GPUs with the same chipset can deliver completely different ownership experiences, and to make sure the next time you're standing in that micro center aisle, you're not just comparing boxes. You're evaluating risk, because a GPU isn't just the heart of your PC, it's the single most expensive part of most builds, and trusting the wrong brand doesn't just cost you money, it costs you time, frustration, and peace of mind. So now I want to hear from you. Which GPU brand burned you? Which one surprised you, good or bad? And what's the one red flag you wish you had paid attention to sooner? Drop it in the comments. If this video helped you think differently, hit like so more people see it. And if you want more no-nonsense PC buying guides that actually protect your wallet, make sure you're subscribed, because the smartest PC builders aren't the ones who chase specs. They're the ones who know who to trust.